Hey, welcome to the live stream tonight. We are going to talk about relationships. Specifically, are you alone or in relationship? Human beings assume we're relating when we're in front of the company of others. That hinges on who we are being as we relate ourselves to our experience of being present now. So I might ask myself, am I expecting something from out there to provide joy, comfort, understanding, acceptance, or any other perceived missing link to my experience of satisfaction in this moment? Said another way, does my experience of satisfaction depend on others fulfilling my expectations? If the answer is yes, I may know that I consciously or unconsciously am playing the role of victim in my daily relations because I'm dependent on something out there fitting some picture and expectation that I have over here. The events and circumstances evident as daily conscious or unconscious experience are my own unique self-discovering of the allness of infinite mind, my own wholeness seen as understandable language. That being said, have you ever considered that every moment both evolves and involves your own willingness to be all in all? Human beings live positively and negatively proportionately to their acknowledged perception of reality. Mrs. Laird wrote, "My own love, self-conscious living tells me in the language of my discernment that I cannot blame my others for my lack or look to my others to supply my need. As the fundamental fact of life, love makes each individual, each of us, responsible for our environment and relationships. Love provides whatever information I need on my belief level to keep me alert to my self-divineness." And that's right from Margaret Laird's Christian Science Re-Explored on page 231.
Yeah.
So welcome, Betty. How are you?
Really fine.
Excellent.
That was a mouthful, but what it's really telling us is, and especially Margaret's quote, is that every situation is unique and there's no way you can be a copy of something else. And if you are trying to copy something else, you're not present at all.
There you
You're
go.
just being something else.
Right. So as it relates to are we alone or in relationship, say a little bit more on an idea about what we're going to be exploring today, besides what I just wrote.
Well, from a science point of view, relating is always a self-experience. You know, I relate to the world that I walk through, although it is my world that I'm walking through.
Right.
So I very seldom relate as if I'm relating to myself, but that's a blind spot. Actually, I am the world I walk through. And relating to it is like a word that means there's something else over there.
Right.
So I'd say you can't really relate that way. But in the language I live in, that's the way it would look.
Right. Right. So what I want everybody to know, if this is your first time, you can join us on YouTube, and you can subscribe to the channel and give us a thumbs up, give us a heart on Facebook or a thumbs up. We love those, and feel free to comment and ask any questions that you have, and we will reply even if it's not still live. We look through the comments and reply and incorporate those into future live streams. So we welcome the participation. Okay, so shall we dive in?
Mm-hmm.
All right. We start with Christian Science Re-Explored on page 232, starting on line 34, where Margaret Laird wrote, "He who wants love to be loving in a personal sense and outlines love according to his wants or needs is bound to find himself impoverished and unhappy."
Yeah.
So to the degree that you've outlined what love looks like and what it needs to look like and what you expect from it and all of that, will find yourself impoverished and unhappy. Why is that?
Well, love is an experience of yourself, a feeling that is not a thing that you can point to. And it's a difficult feeling to describe. So if you're looking for it in another, you're very likely not going to find it. If you allow it to be, it will show up in the most unexpected ways in children, in friends, in husbands and wives, and neighbors, in your relationship with almost everything you can think of.
And when you say you'll find it if you allow it to be, does that mean that you'll find what sort of matches your expectations? Because to me, love is fundamental and foundational. So it's whether it looks like it or not, it's the best love I've got, the best view of love I've got, right?
Yeah, but it is also it's a feeling that expands as you go, because it isn't a thing that is like 2 inches wide and 2 inches deep, and that's all there is.
Right.
It's like the air around you.
Yeah.
Love is everywhere. Your experience of it is up to you.
Okay.
It's like the air we breathe.
Yes.
Love is the foundation of existence.
Right.
The awareness of it is a whole different story.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
In fact, sometimes you don't even recognize it's love when you're enjoying yourself.
Yeah.
But it is an appreciation of what's going on.
Yeah. I like that word. I like that word, appreciation. It's like would wonder be in there?
Yep.
Okay.
And enjoyment.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And access.
Okay. Yeah, cool. All right. And it's only when we don't look for love on the conscious belief level or for the fulfillment of our wants on that level that love can break through from the unconscious and form the perfect concept.
Yeah. And the reason you can't look for it is because the effort to quantify it or qualify it so I could find it if it was out there immediately eliminates any possibility of having that feeling. And what it is an awareness.
Okay.
And if I try to quantify it or qualify it, I'm missing the boat.
Okay.
Because it doesn't have that dimension.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very good. All right. Now, in the message to the Mother Church, Mary Baker Eddy on page 20, line 8 said, "The scientist is alone with his own being in the reality of things." And that's pretty much it. So it speaks to the are you alone or in relationship? You're alone with your own being and the reality of things.
And your relatedness is with yourself.
And it looks like the world I walk through.
Yeah.
Okay.
The reality of things.
Yeah.
It's my own being. So it's a relationship I have with myself and the way I live myself and the way I feel about myself and the whole bit. It's always a self-experience.
Yeah. Scientists are not hypnotists. They're not mortal mind curists or faith curists. They have faith, but they have science, understanding, and works as well.
Yep.
And I'm not sure where that quote is from. Is that from the message to the Mother Church?
It's from the messages, yes.
Okay,
place.
Got it. Okay. And then you, in your book, Mind is the Athlete, although I have it saying Betty Albee on page 17, that means Mind is the Athlete. Quoting from Marcel Proust, you wrote, "The real voyage of discovery consists not in seeking new landscape, but in having new eyes." In other words, I can shift my point of view.
Yeah. And you know, we think that we need to make a change out there. I need a new job. I need a new boss. I need my children to change their behavior. I need my husband to behave differently.
Right.
I need the club to agree with me. It's always going on out there as if that was going to make the difference. But if we live it that way, which most of us do a lot of the time, we discover that doesn't got anything to do with it.
Right.
Only when we become self-satisfied, self-aware,
Yeah.
self-willing
Yes.
to allow it to be. It's when we take care of home base, in other words.
Right.
That
I mean,
everything falls into place.
right. It's like another one is, if you loved me,
Then you would, or you
Right.
wouldn't.
Right. Exactly. And that's
Never a formula for success.
more of the same trap, because it sets up the expectation. It sets up the upset. You'll notice that where you have an expectation and it doesn't get fulfilled, usually an upset is right around the corner.
Mhm.
Now, within each of us, abilities and capacities beyond current evidence exist untapped, unrecognized, and unheralded. And that's, again, you for mind is the athlete. And what ability are you speaking to, their ability and capability?
It means that I am all. The knowledge of aught beside myself is impossible.
So we don't even know. We just limit ourselves. I can't do that, or I can't do this, or whatever. But
That's
really,
because we've got a lot of not I's in there.
uh-huh.
I'm not that. I'm not that. Not that. Not that. Not that. Not that. I'm this, so I'm stuck with a real limited picture of what can happen.
Right. Okay.
If Betty doesn't have it, it's not going to happen. And if I'm being myself, it already is present.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. Now, if you have any questions or comments or anything like that, please put them in the comments, and we will address them. All right, moving on. Christian Science Re-Explored on page 233, starting on line 17. Margaret Laird wrote, "Face it, there comes a time in the evolution of consciousness when love will make us unhappy and restless with what may have been satisfying in the past." So what's more about that?
Well, she wrote, following on that, she wrote, with only partial vision or imperfect apprehension, we're likely to think that a husband, a wife, children, friends, employers, employees, etc., are sapping our vitality, our joy, our spontaneity. And we think that love could liberate us.
Yes. Yeah, that would be a mistake.
Mm.
If we think that love could liberate us. If we're living divinely, love is a liberator when we live divinely as ourselves.
Yeah, but it isn't hinged on having them do something.
Correct. Because we would realize, and we would be living love present, sourcing everything that I see, feel, hear, taste, touch.
That's what the note is saying. Do you see the note there? Yeah. Within each of us, abilities, capacities beyond their current evidence exist untapped, unheralded, and recognized.
Right. So the challenge is to challenge yourself to see beyond the failed expectation, to see beyond the current perception, and really take on your point of view, acknowledging the facts.
Yeah, and the facts are always pointing back home, back to home base. When you're looking around saying, "What's wrong here?" It's what's wrong here.
Right. It's this finger that slowly turns to point back.
Because that's who we think we are.
Right. Okay.
Yep.
And we learn as we make love our way of life that we are wounding ourselves by clinging to the old self-image from which love would liberate us. I think you may have said that.
Mm-hmm.
All right, moving on. Science and Health. Mary Baker Eddy wrote, "The Christianly scientific real is the sensuous unreal. Perfection underlies reality. Without perfection, nothing is wholly real." So say more about that. Let's unpack that a bit.
Well, Mrs. Eddy's statement, the Christianly scientific real is the sensuous unreal, is pointing to the oneness of being.
Yeah.
I don't care what I want to call it. I can call it real. I can call it unreal. I can call it good. I can call it bad. But what it is one thing going on. And the reason I like it or don't like it is whether it agrees with me or not. As a human being, I like to find agreement. Doesn't agree with me, well, what in the world is that?
Right.
You know, so then I'm again thrown back to what makes you think that there's something wrong with that statement, Betty? You know, it makes me question myself. And I've just been reading this book by John Dorsey, Living Consciously, The Science of Self. And he has written a really wonderful book, including everything about it, getting you to see that there's nothing going on outside of who you are. Maybe outside of who you think you are, but not outside of who you are. So he has circles that he draws. And in the circle, he puts a lot of things. And all of them are himself, the way he sees it. My neighbor, my friend, my wife, my child, my job, et cetera, but it's all my being. It's all one thing going on. But he says when you get over to being something over there, he calls that the not I. And when you have the not I and the not I and the not I, people, places, and things that you think are over there somewhere, then you find out that you're not living yourself as a whole, as all there is. And to the degree that you do that, you live a very confined, unspontaneous existence. Mm-hmm. And so he's always opening up. I had a friend that took a course from him up at Wayne State University in Michigan some years back. And she said that he called roll in his classes Henry God, John God, Mary God, Louise God, because he wanted them to begin to see that the only God they have is the God they're being. And so if they are being God, there is a whole different set of possibilities to your behavior, to your self-value, to your performance, to your sense of yourself.
Sure.
He says there were some things I wanted to share, and I don't know whether I can come up with them here quickly or not. But he says, by self, I mean nothing but singleness of human being, nothing but oneness of human individuality. Meaning itself can be nothing but a mental construct standing for life value. In other words, the term self means all inclusiveness and inviolability of the integrity of human existence. Big words saying the same thing we've been talking about. One thing going on. It's all me being myself, being, looking like whatever you describe.
Right.
But it doesn't, the experience of it doesn't exist outside of myself, outside of my own consciousness.
Right.
So when I would like to blame over there, I have to recognize that if I didn't create the over there, there'd be nothing to blame, because that is all part of my own being. And even when I put it over there, I'm not removing it from here.
Right. It reminds me of the peanut butter sandwiches story.
Of what?
The peanut butter sandwiches story.
Oh.
The guy goes to work every day. The guy goes to work every day, and they all brings his lunch, and every day he sits down to eat his lunch, and he says, peanut butter sandwiches. I hate peanut butter sandwiches. So his buddy sitting next to him says, why don't you tell your wife you don't like peanut butter sandwiches? And he said, don't bring my wife into this. I make my own peanut butter sandwiches.
Exactly. And we do. We all make our own.
Yeah.
Whether we agree or not.
Yep. Now in your book, Mind is the Athlete, on page 9, you say, much of the time we live ourselves unaware of the universal nature of the consciousness being each one of us and giving presence to the entire spectrum of existence. Now, that's a big mouthful. So let's break that down a bit.
We live unaware, of the facts about being.
A lot of the time, I believe that to be true.
Universal, because we're always picking fault or picking things apart as if there was something over there to be fixed.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So another statement from Dorsey right on there. He says, even when I pretend that my otherness is not I, such is only a self-deception.
Right. Yep. So as we live unaware, we're just deceiving ourselves when we buy into some argument about something over there needs to be blah, 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 right?
Yeah.
And so we live ourselves unaware of the universal nature of consciousness, right? That really is the source and condition of all that is and all that seems to be.
Yep. And when you do that, by the way, it may give you a moment of breathing space or something for some reason.
Right.
But believe me, it doesn't go away. It hangs around and hangs around and hangs around until eventually you have to figure it out one way or another. It will not disappear.
Right.
You can't live with a lie. If there's only one mind, if there's only one being, you can't be fault finding with this and that and the other. It's like, I wish my arm would work. Darn it, that arm, it should work better than that. Well, when is it going to straighten itself out and start doing its thing? Not until I move it,
Right.
Like that.
Right. Okay. Very good. Now, in Christian Science Re-Explored, Margaret Laird wrote, when we personally decide what language will best identify reality for us, or outline what compensation love should provide on our belief level, we run into difficulties. Again, we're deciding personally, Kim, what something should look like. What do I know? It's going to look exactly as it should look based on what there is for me to learn and discover. And it's all self-discovering.
I'm going to frame that and put it up over here. So the next time you ask me for something and I bring you something, you won't say, not that.
That's
Kim,
right.
here's a quote for you.
That's right.
Well, it's kind of like that with ourselves. We have to be willing to eat our words on these things, because the fact is, there's nothing going on outside of the consciousness that is you.
Yeah.
And you like to call it me and not me, or I and not I, or over here and not over there.
Yep.
But we make all that language up.
Yeah.
Actually, we are the world we walk through. And every detail about it is unique to my own being. I am the world I walk through.
Right.
And every single bit of it is my experience of myself seen infinitely as the world I walk through.
Right. Well, interestingly, at the point at which we are having the expectation and determining how things need to look and all of that, at that point, the very things we do to preserve and enhance life destroy it.
That's right.
So we want to open our affections to the principle that moves all in harmony. And again, that's Margaret Laird in Christian Science Re-Explored.
Yep.
Okay. And in Science and Health on page 490, Mary Baker Eddy said, the scientifically Christian explanations of the nature and origin of man destroy all material sense with immortal testimony. Again, not a paragraph I relate to very well, but go ahead and unpack it for us.
Well, I wrote a note about immortal testimony. That's a phrase that Mrs. Eddy used. And to me, that means the acknowledgement of spiritual facts.
Okay.
Immortal testimony is that.
Okay.
The acknowledgement of spiritual facts. And that's what establishes the foundation for consciously living yourself divinely.
Right. So acknowledgement. acknowledging the spiritual facts.
That's right.
And that's all you need, all that's present, all that's needed.
Yep.
Is getting clear about that. And in your book, Mind is the Athlete, you wrote, there is one cause or source constructing and constituting all existence, and it is wholly mental.
Yep. I can't tell you how many times Mrs. Laird said to me, we live and move and have being mentally and always have.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And what can be done? Science suggests that we consciously acknowledge mind, universally present, as identifying evidence that all is infinite mind manifest.
Yep.
So back to our question, are you alone or in relationship?
Yep.
What do you think? What do you say?
The answer is yes. I'm alone or in a relationship.
There you go. So the answer is yes.
Either way, it's all one thing going on.
Right. So where you have
it does not define it.
Right. So whether no matter how it looks, good or bad, right or wrong, whatever your judgments are, whatever your expectations or unmet expectations are you alone or in relationship? Yes. And you could say always.
Yep.
Same thing.
Either way I want to look at it.
That's right. So what's one thing people can tackle this week before next week's live stream to really explore this in their life?
Well, we had, what did we have when we were talking about the responses we've gotten? I think the next week we're going to talk about age.
Yeah, I'm not sure. We'll see. But could be that we're talking about that. But when you're looking at your own relationships, look and see. What are you frustrated by? What's going on? What's unmet expectations? And where can you acknowledge the source of being? The source of
we're glad to address them if we hear from you.
Right. But just look and see for yourselves. And then if you have any questions, if you have anything you'd like covered in a live stream, please put it in the comments and we will tackle it. We will take it up and figure out. But
see if we can share some ideas anyway.
Right. But there being no questions brought before the live stream today, we are going to end the live stream and we will see you next week, Tuesday, 5 p.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. Central. And until then, be in relationship and be present to love.
Okay.
And we'll see you then.